Forgot how much I loved worshiping on the lawn. We only do it once a year. But my family and I were sitting down here, and you all sounded fantastic, especially during the bridge of gratitude, that last song. Good morning. My name is Jamie Cotting. I had the privilege of heading to Guatemala with these teens a couple weeks ago. We got back a week ago. No, wait a minute. Did we get back? I don't even know. Last Tuesday? Yeah, last Tuesday. No, whatever. That all runs together. Yeah. Anyway, so while they set the stage here, I figured I'd set the stage a little bit for everyone else. Last week we heard from the Romania team. A bunch of them were over the couple weeks that they spent in Romania on their short-term mission trip. Sorry, I'm a little distracted here. We knew this was going to be a bit of a complicated mess. I'm going to go here now. Can you just stand up here and direct me the whole time? Would that be great, Jake? And then there were 16 of us that headed to Guatemala. We left on a Tuesday morning. There's 11 of us up here today. We are missing. We're missing Monique Hurley and Jody Utter, two of our leaders. We're missing Jody's son Wyatt, and then we're missing Pastor Len and his daughter Natalie as well. But we've got 11 of us total, 10 of the teens, just missing the one teen Wyatt. And so we're going to start here. Do you guys have a mic yet? Here you go. We're going to start here with some introductions. Wow, did we fit? Is this me? Wow, we had more room up here than we thought. We're going to start here with introductions. The teens are going to introduce themselves, what grade they're in, and then give a little bit of an overview of kind of where their minds and their hearts were before the trip, expectations, why they went, what they were praying about, that sort of thing. So we're going to start here with Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah Hirschberger. I'm a sophomore, and my expectation going to the trip, I was expecting to see God move in like some big way, and like I went because I just felt Him calling me. I've always had like an interest in missions, and so yeah.
Hi, my name's Andrew Cotting. Gonna be a senior. My expectations for the trip. I was kind of in a spiritual wilderness for a few months before, so I was kind of expecting God to like move. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ava Matichek. I just graduated high school. My expectation for this trip was that it was going to be a lot of emotions, and that I was going to be pretty just emotionally drained afterwards.
My name is Josiah. I'm going to be a junior. And going into the trip, I was expecting God's voice to be loud and see Him moving in big and obvious ways.
My name's
Try it again.
My name's Janelle Gaiman, and I just graduated high school. Going into this trip, I felt like I wasn't enough and like I wasn't completely prepared. And I was scared that because I was messed up, I wouldn't be able to have God work through me.
I'm Lucy Farnsworth. I'll be a sophomore. My expectations for the trip really weren't what actually happened. I was, expecting to kind of just like go through it really easily and it all to come naturally, but it was, a little more difficult.
My name's Josh Hirschberger, and I'll be a senior next year. Going into this trip, I think I expected, like a couple other people said, like a big God moment. And so, yeah, you'll hear, it didn't really happen.
I'll be at school as well. Oh my gosh. This is rough. I was expecting, like a couple other people, I was just expecting to see God move in, like, some big ways and to hear His voice really clearly.
My name is Matthew Duriga, and I just graduated high school. Going into Guatemala, I expected to enter into an area that was really dark and kind of Jesus, and that wasn't exactly what it was.
I'm Elliot Cotting. I'm going into my freshman year of high school, and my expectations going into the trip was that I wasn't going to be able to eat a lot because basically leading up to the last few weeks, anything I ate made me feel nauseous, so I figured I would be hungry basically the whole trip.
Well, that's great. So yeah. What do we do? Give us a minute. Which one? This one? Okay. So, test. We good? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Turn it up. Someone said turn it up, please. I saw a finger going up, a pointer finger going up. So I did the math. It was 2 Tuesdays ago that we returned. I had to make sure that was right. And so I wanted to give a quick schedule overview here. We partnered with Connecting Hearts Ministry in Guatemala, an organization that's been doing ministry directly in Guatemala since 1994. And we worked with Kelly Fogut there. She hosted us in the Blue House. We arrived on a Tuesday morning, flew back on the following Tuesday morning. So if you take out the travel days, we were there for 6 full days. We'll hear some of those details of those 6 days here in a little bit from the teens, but 2 of those days they taught English-based lessons to the students in the Amigos Christian School, which was right across the street from the Blue House that we stayed in. Students were anywhere from kindergarten through 9th grade. We completed 3 home visits with families that were connected to Connecting Hearts Ministry there, and also a couple of them connected directly to the church, which was really neat. We painted classrooms and did concrete work. On Saturday, a long work day that was had some challenges of its own. On Sunday, we attended a Guatemalan church service where we understood very little. Some of us a little more than others. The students currently taking Spanish maybe picked up a little more, but and then we spent a ton of time connecting with and interacting with students during recess time at the school, which actually ended up being some of the coolest moments of the week, and we'll hear a little bit about that as well. Before we pass it off, I just wanted to set the stage again that this trip was very different than the Romania trip, and we kind of had to process that as a team last week after we heard the Romania team share last week. And I think one of the biggest differences was last week we heard the Romania team talking about their prayers that their trip would be the start of an ongoing relationship that would bear fruit over the years ahead. And actually what we saw was a lasting, continuing relationship with Connecting Hearts Ministry. Pastor Len first traveled to Guatemala with Connecting Hearts in 2011. So we were the 5th group to take this trip with him. And as I prepared for this morning, it kind of felt like last week the Romania team maybe heard God say, "Watch what I do." And maybe we heard more, "Look what I've been doing and will continue to do," which was really neat to see this continuation, these relationships that have been developed over time, and people who recognized Len. He's kind of hard to forget, right? But people who recognized Len over the past 12 years and seeing him greet these people and the joy on their faces that we were there again was really neat. And so speaking of Pastor Len, he would have loved to have been here this morning, but we have the next best thing. We're going to get started here with a note from Len that Hannah here is going to read.
Walking through the town of Peronia this year was drastically different than my experience in 2011. For some context, Peronia is a red zone, which means it's a place I recommend you not travel or visit to because it can be extremely dangerous. On that first trip 12 years ago, we were told not to make eye contact with men when we walked through town, to stay in a tight huddle with the guys on the trip on the outside of our group, and not to be rude to the people on the street, but also not to be too friendly. The friendly people we ran into were nice because they wanted something from us. Here come the Americans with the money, so the person would hold up produce at each food stand and try to get our attention to buy. On this trip, the town looked basically the same, maybe more run down, which I wouldn't have thought possible. But some of the people we ran into were different. It wasn't the majority, but multiple people made eye contact and responded with a smile, a head nod, or a greeting, even some of the men. Generally, people were more friendly and not only to get something from us. I was struck with the importance of Jesus' light shining consistently into the darkness and the power and miraculous difference it makes. I know this truth in my head, but sometimes it stops short of my heart when things seem so dark. Peronia is still known for its corruption, violence, gang activity, and lack of access to essential services, yet the difference between 2011 and this trip was so clear to me. Jesus is making a difference in that town, and we were able to be a small part of it. Jesus can do the same in your situation, no matter where he has placed you and no matter how dark it seems, so continue to let his light shine.
Can you hear me? There we go. Are we good? Yeah. All right. So we're going to get started now with the teen share. And Andrew, I'm going to start with you with some first impressions of the people that we met and ran across when we first landed in Guatemala the first couple days.
Yeah. So first thing I noticed about the people in Guatemala, like Len said, where we were, it was a red zone. So it was also a little poor, right? So they didn't have much. But the first thing that I noticed about the people there was how inexplicably joyful they were. All the kids in the school, just through interactions with them, like if you didn't know, like their circumstances, you like wouldn't be able to tell that they have a hard life, just because of the joy that they carry themselves with, and how they live their life. They're so generous too. At recess, we'd be out there like playing soccer. And then kids would just be coming up, trying to give you half their sandwich, or this one little boy tried to give me some of his money. I'm like, I cannot take your money. Like, that's not, like, no, keep that. But like, it's just so different than here. Like, there's so much like anger and like discontentment with what we have, like. And they don't have anything, and they're so joyful and content with it. And it's just, I don't know, it just hit me. Like, why aren't we like that? Like, I always want more, right? Like, more stuff, more things. Like, I'm always trying to find ways to get new stuff and trying to better my life. And they don't have that, and they're happier than I'll ever be. And it's just, I don't know, it just hit me different.
Thanks, Andrew. I think you'll hear that theme throughout this morning. Ava, our two translators, Natalie and Alvaro, shared their testimonies with us that first night, and there was a theme in Alvaro's story that you saw time and again on the trip. Would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so he shared our testimony, like Jamie said, first night, and one of the things you'll notice is when he was talking about it, he really talked about how dependent he was on the Lord. Prayer was really important, and he understood how important prayer and the power behind prayer. Some other things that really impacted me that he shared, he grew up without a dad. Dad left the family, left mom and two sisters, so he kind of had to step in and take care of the family, and actually his dad went and started another family. And there was one time, like later on, when his dad was struggling to find just like the basic like groceries. He couldn't afford for groceries. And Alvaro, he went to his sister and he's like, we need to provide for our dad. And she was like, why would we do that when he couldn't even provide for us when we were growing up? And he said, grace has been shown to us, so grace we should give back. So that just really impacted me. And then also eventually, one day he called up his dad and he said, I know you didn't ask for it, but I forgive you for everything you did, and I would like to ask if you would forgive me as well. And I think just as a Christian, you hear those things over and over again, grace and forgiveness. But how he responded and how easily he did that was just crazy to me, because how hard is it for me personally to hold on to that hurts and to feel like you're justified feeling that way. But actually God has shown us so much grace and forgiveness that that's not something we should keep. We should be giving that to others.
Awesome. Thanks, Ava. Matt, there was one particular encounter on one of our home visits that stuck with you, and it was with Brandon. It's a teenager that our youth ministry has been sponsoring since 2015. We were able to go into their house and sit with them in a big circle and just have a really sweet time of fellowship with them, with Brandon, his mom, and his two younger sisters. So what was it during that encounter that stuck with you?
Yeah, so it was on the third day that we went to see him, and like Jamie said, our youth group is sponsoring him alongside with the Hurleys, and alongside with that, he's also like, really close to us in age. So I think we all felt a really close connection to him. And he started walking us through what his typical day looks like, and he has a dream of becoming, I believe it was a cardiovascular surgeon.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is amazing. And so right now he gets up around 3:30 in the morning so that he can get to school, beat the traffic. He's there until around 2. And then he comes home, spends some time with his family, and then pretty much studies until 8 or 9 and then does it all again the next day. Alongside that, his dad is in the United States working, so he's kind of like the man of the household right now. And so he's also attempting to get into a government-sponsored college that will pay for his college. And in order to do that, he has to pass 3 rounds of exams and it's a very competitive school, so it's a lot of pressure on him. He even said that one time he had so much pressure that half of his face went numb. And you could just tell throughout while he's telling us this that he wants to impress us and he wants to make us proud of what he's doing with our sponsorship, pretty much. And Jamie kind of picked up on that and spoke into it and said, like, hey, we don't want you to feel any pressure that you have to perform for us or succeed because of us. And Len also spoke into that and just simply told him, you don't owe us anything. And right after he said that, you could just see Brandon like break down. He started crying, and you could just feel this immense weight lift off of his shoulders. And it was just a beautiful moment that God definitely used. And for me personally, on the walk home, I was kind of processing that with everyone else. And God kind of spoke to me and was just like saying the same thing to me, like, you don't owe me anything. I don't want you to keep working to impress me. I just want your love. And so, after the trip, that's just kind of what I've been focusing on, not asking God for much other than just to feel his love. So, yeah, it was really impactful for him, I think, and for all of us.
Yeah, it was it's what they call a holy moment, right? You could just feel the Spirit move into that moment. And when he started wiping tears away from his face, like, I teared up again just hearing that story again. So thanks for sharing that, Matt. So on Wednesday and Thursday, the teens split up into 3 groups to do their English-based lessons. They had developed these lessons on their own before we arrived, and some fine-tuning, I think, once we arrived as well. Some taught songs, some talked about parts of the body, some played games, but they all tied their lessons back to scriptural truths. So Connor, I wanted to talk a little bit about how God showed up for your group in particular in a cool way while you were there beforehand, before the lesson, and then what you saw during your lesson and maybe even after.
Yeah, so we prepared our lesson quite a ways in advance. We felt pretty good about it, right? And it all kind of fell apart the day before we had to start teaching. And so, like, me and the 2 other people in my group met up, and we were like, we got to figure this out. Like, this could be really bad if we don't have anything right now, because it all fell apart. And we sat there for a minute, and we had an idea, and we were like, this could work. So went into the school next day, taught our lesson. We taught them some basic like shapes and colors, and we played a game with them, and it went like fantastic. And yeah, I think that was God just kind of showing up the night before, and we needed to just kind of let go and let him control it and like put our trust completely in him. And yeah, he showed up, and it was a good lesson. And even later in the week, like, we would see the kids around that we had taught, and we would hear them talking about like the things we had taught them. And yeah, it just showed that it like really stuck with them. And like during the part of our lesson where we tied it back into like scripture, we talked about how each of them is like created uniquely and differently, and how God loves each of them, and he loves them so much that he sent his son Jesus to die for them. And yeah, I mean, they were just like super engaged, and I think that really stuck with them as well.
Yeah, the engagement in the lessons, all 3 of the lessons, was really neat to see. They taught each group taught their lesson, K through 9. I mean, you taught to how many different classrooms, so that multiple times they would teach the lesson, and we got to watch as leaders all these different times, and you could see the kids were having so much fun, whether they were hitting each other or hitting themselves in the head with I don't remember what those sticks are called, Josiah. Boom what? Boom whackers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with boom whackers, but some of them played cup game on the floor that the kids loved, and then Connor, his group, they did kickball on the playground there, and it was so neat. They were having so much fun, and seeing our teens interact with these kids was really awesome to see. So So speaking of the playground, the general area in the middle of the courtyard there, Lucy, it sounds kind of silly to say, but recess was like maybe our favorite time of the week. We had multiple days and multiple recess times where we got to play with and interact with the kids. So could you talk about the impact of that time and maybe even give like a little overview of all the things that were happening in that little space there?
Yeah, so we had a lot of different games going on, like you would be pulled into a game by a kid, they'd be like, come over, and so we would have jump rope and a lot of soccer games. Soccer was great. Their foot skills, impeccable. And like it was so easy to connect with them. It was so easy to just step into something and like feel like they truly wanted you there, like they were so excited to have us and to be able to spend this time with us. And like you don't understand the impact until you're gone. Like it doesn't seem special in the moment, but as soon as you leave, you just realize how much you're gonna miss that time with them. And like throughout the whole week, the more I got to know these kids, the more I just wished I could give them so much. And all they wanted was to spend time with us, and that was so easy to do. It was so enjoyable, and yeah, it was so simple and so impactful.
Yeah, when you talk about impact of that time, it's so easy to dismiss playing soccer with these kids or sidewalk chalk or any of the things that we did. But there were two moments that I think really solidified this for us. Number one was when we had the home visit with Brandon. He was a student at the Amigos School as well, and he shared some of his most cherished memories were when past groups had come to visit and done the same exact thing, played with him, spent time with him, taught him things, and it only happens a couple times a year for these kids, and they really enjoyed it. And Brandon told us how excited he was that now his younger sisters got to experience it as well, which was really neat. And then there was something else. There was a teacher at the school. His name was Cesar, also almost a professional footballer, right? Professional soccer player back in the day. But he shared with me the morning that we were leaving for the airport. We were watching them play everything again on the playground. And he leaned over and told me that this group, these teens, how special they are. And I said, yep, and I've heard that before and I know it. But he explained, he said, most groups come in and they keep a distance between themselves and the kids. And he said, I don't know why, I don't know if it's they're afraid to get too close and then they got to leave or whatever, but he said, our teens didn't do that. They were purposeful about engaging with them and connecting with them and trying to, even with the language barrier and all these other things that could stand in the way, our teens were right there with them, and Cesar saw it and told me about it, and it's been shared with the teens too, that it was so neat to watch and so neat to hear from some people who saw that impact as well. So Josh, you led our Devo time on Saturday morning. And that morning you had said that you missed one thing in particular. Could you talk about what that was and how you saw God speak into that over the next couple days?
Right. So, going into that Devo time, I had no clue what to talk about, and I was like, I'm really missing worship. And so I was like, why don't we just do some worship? And so, that's what I did. And then later that day, that was the work day. And so we're going, and me and Wyatt are talking, and we hear this song, and we're like, wait, we kind of recognize that song. And so me and Wyatt run up, and Josiah was there too, and so we all go up there, and it was they were worshiping. They were doing "This Is Amazing Grace." It was in Spanish, so we didn't understand it that much, but we knew what it was. And so we go up there, and we were peeking in the classroom, and the guy's like, come on in. And so we went in there and worshiped for a little while, and so yeah, that was just really cool. And then Sunday morning at church they had worship, and again we didn't really understand it, but like it didn't feel any different than worshiping here on a Sunday morning. And I thought that was super cool because yeah, that's the way it impacted me was. Yeah, I realized like God isn't impartial to like understanding the words or if you have all this tech and stuff. Because I mean, the way they worship, they had a lyric video on a screen and then a guy up front just singing along to the lyric video. I thought that was just cool, and yeah, like you don't need all the tech and everything. And it's nice that we have it, but yeah, it's the posture of your heart that matters. So,
Amen. So in the beginning, we heard some expectations before the trip, and in particular, we had a couple people who had some pretty big concerns before the trip. So Janelle, let's start with you. You were wrestling with some things in the weeks before we left, and even while we were in Guatemala, and then a little bit even when we met to talk about this, our time to share this Sunday. So what were those things, and how did God speak into them during the trip?
Yeah, so at times on the trip and before the trip, I felt like I didn't belong and that I wasn't like holy enough or as in tune with God as everyone else who was going on the trip. And I struggled with being selfish and wanting to be seen and appreciated. And that made me feel messed up and too messed up to be loved by God or by others. And so on Sunday, we were figuring out how we could present the identity bracelet, which was just a bracelet that taught the kids. It had different colors that represented things God said about them to the college. So we were presenting it to the college kids, and we wanted to use personal stories. And the girls were hanging out together, and Jody and Monique pushed us to see how we could participate because we didn't really want to. And I realized that what I had been struggling with belonging, lined up with the yellow on the bracelet, which is Satan's lie that we are inferior, but God's truth found in Ephesians 2:4-6, that we are seated with him in heaven. So I hesitantly shared that with the group, and then they encouraged me not just to share it with the college kids, but also they encouraged me that I was valued and that I belonged in the group and on the trip. And that didn't fix all my problems, and I still struggle with it, but it helped a lot, and it brought me closer to the other girls. And another thing I had struggled with was how God could use me if I was struggling so much. And so I shared that night in the college group, and I don't know if the kids related to it, but the lady in charge said that it was more powerful that we shared our personal experiences with them so that they could relate. And I loved seeing how God redeemed my struggle, and he didn't completely get rid of it, but he worked in it and through me to impact others, reinforcing what I learned before the trip, that God can use messed up people like me.
Thanks, Janelle. All right, Elliot, let's revisit the stomach issues. For a little more context, we actually brought, my wife Mandy and I brought Elliot up on the Sunday before we left to pray with an elder for some healing, because he was worried about what he was going to eat, and as his dad, I was really worried about what I was going to be able to feed him, because he's not exaggerating when he says that pretty much the week before the trip, anything he ate made him nauseous, and we didn't know what it was. We weren't sure what was bothering him, and so Elliot, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so before the trip, I was eating breakfast, and I had my normal cereal and almond milk, and like 20 minutes after that, I was like, I don't feel so good. And so we just thought my stomach hurts random times, so we just thought that maybe it was just something random. And so I ate lunch that day, and my stomach hurt again, and we got a little bit more concerned. And I was like, I'm just going to play it safe with dinner, not eat a lot. And so that's what I did. My stomach still hurt. And then we went into this phase where I ate one thing and then introduced something else to it. But yeah, it didn't really limit or put anything down because basically anything that I ate made me nauseous. And so we found a few things that didn't really make me sick, like gluten-free bread and cereal. So yeah, I brought that on the trip with me. But yeah, like my dad said before, Sunday they prayed for me, and I didn't feel anything at first. Didn't feel anything the Monday before we left, and then Tuesday we had to wake up at like 3 in the morning. So yeah, but I ate and my stomach didn't hurt. And I was like, okay, maybe it's just a coincidence. And I don't remember anything else I ate that day other than like chicken, which was what we ate a lot in Guatemala, and my stomach didn't hurt. I was like, sweet, so maybe my stomach's not gonna hurt in Guatemala. And I was like, so I went that whole time, and my stomach did not hurt once. So.
Yeah, and just to close that loop, we had Monique Hurley, one of the leaders. She's got back problems. Those that did not bother her while we were there. And Len's got old man problems, just lots of aches and pains, which I can relate to that as well. And he says when he goes on these trips, those things just go away. And he's able to play soccer for an hour at a time and on concrete and not have it bother him. So we saw God show up and answer prayers in some pretty incredible ways, which was neat. There were also some struggles while we were there too. We had Connor, Lucy, and Hannah at various times. Connor lost a whole day in bed with a stomach thing. Lucy and Hannah lost parts of 1 or 2 days as well. And then so those were difficult, obviously, to deal with. Lucy, real quick, like going there, losing that time when we've only got 6 days to begin with, like how did you process that?
Well, it was really difficult because it was like a question as to like why it had to be happening, like what was the reason. And I did a lot of like trying to figure that out and trying to understand it. Still don't understand it. I don't know the reason why I got sick, but like the last couple of days especially, like just missing out on some of the time with the kids. It was, it wasn't fun. You go there to, spend the time there. That's just not in the plan to get sick. So it was just like it stepped in front of the plans and it complicated things, but it was still good to be able to cherish the time that we did have.
Yeah, we had to call lots of audibles while we were there, and expectations maybe not being met. Andrew, you shared that you had some specific things you were hoping God would speak to and do for you while you were there. Why don't you give us the reality of what that was like?
Sure. So, like I said, spiritual wilderness, about half a year, right, before. So going to the trip, really wanted to hear God again, see him move, just feel like go back to like where I was, like after life, like I just wanted that again. And so first few nights, like didn't feel anything, didn't see anything really, didn't hear God. And so I was getting frustrated, like all right, God, like in this country, completely different country, and I'm not feeling you. Like, could you just like please like I need you. And so third night, same story. And then so I was like, okay, if I'm not like hearing from you, at least let me like serve, like let me leave a mark on this trip. So like we're gonna do concrete the service day. Then I sprained my wrist the day before, and so I couldn't do concrete. And so that really sucked because that was like, I felt like midway through the week, that was how I was gonna make a difference down there, I guess, kind of. And that was taken away. And so it was really like God, what are you doing? Like I'm down here trying to serve you, and like it's just not feeling anything. And so the first few days kind of sucked emotionally because I wasn't feeling anything. I was frustrated. Just wanted God. And then that Sunday, during worship at church, all the songs are in Spanish. I have absolutely no idea what is being sung, but eventually I find myself like closing my eyes and singing along, and it wasn't like premeditated or whatever. Like I didn't think about it. It just happened, and it was like the closest I've felt to God in months. In a church in Guatemala, singing in Spanish, not a clue what I'm singing, but I realized that because it was just me and God. There weren't all these distractions. Wasn't all these things I was trying to do, trying to understand, trying to know, trying to control. It was just me and God. And so, yeah, that was kind of redemption for the badness of the first few days emotionally. But I've struggled since coming back. And I've talked to my parents about it, about how even though it didn't feel like God moved grandly in my life, that trip, maybe it wasn't about that. He moved in ways that I still haven't seen yet. And so it's those takeaways that I'm choosing to focus on, as opposed to the fact that I didn't hear God. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Josiah, let's pick up that thread and talk about expectations. You and I had a cool moment the night before we came back, and you talked about how you expected the trip to be like Andrew mentioned. Life. It's a conference that we attend every 3 years. The youth group. And Josiah was on that trip as well last summer, and you said you expected the trip to be like life and for God to speak in some powerful ways to you. And how were you processing that night when you and I talked?
So it was kind of hard to not have my expectations met, but looking back from now that we've come back from Guatemala, I can see that God was moving, but in that moment I didn't really see it, and that was disappointing. But I realized that I came there looking for what I could get out of it, but God showed me that while we did learn some from it, our main goal was to be there to serve the people of Guatemala and to show them God's love. And I realized that it's not about me and what I can get out of it. It's about God.
That's awesome. Hannah, we're going to end with you. There was a moment that we asked the mom of one of the host families during a home visit that we asked her what we could pray for. And she gave an answer that impacted you. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so her answer to when we asked if we could pray for her and what she needed prayer for, she said she just asked if we could pray that God's hand continues to stay in everything, because if His hand is everything, then they have everything that they need. And it was just really cool to see, because we have so much more compared to them, and yet we're still asking for more, and we still say why don't we have this, and but they don't have very much, and yet they're so content with what they have, and all they want is God. And it was just weird to see the differences between the two cultures.
Yeah, Monique shared last Sunday that a lot of times she's been processing that the stuff we have, the opportunities we have, and all these different things. Maybe they don't have as many opportunities, they don't have as much stuff, and maybe some of those things are actually what get in the way, instead of this deep intimacy with God and depending on that. And sometimes we can binge a TV show, or we can go to soccer or track practice, or all these different things that occupy our time, and they don't have as many things getting in the way of their relationship with God, which was a unique way to look at it. So, well, that's all we have. I just wanted to thank all of you who helped support this team, and the 5 who aren't here this morning get to Guatemala. And we are hopefully in 3 years, assuming assuming nothing disrupts that schedule, we'll be heading back to Guatemala with Connecting Hearts Ministry again. So thank you again. And now, teens, thank you. We're going to call up Max and Pastor Jake.
Okay, sounds good. I continue just to be blown away with what God is doing through our teens and in our teens, and I love hearing those stories. So Max, come on up. I know it's going to take a minute to weave your way through all the chairs. Come on up and join us. Leave a couple of chairs for us to sit. So we just heard a bunch of stories last week of a team going over to Romania. And then today we hear the stories of Guatemala and all that God did there. And we actually have another young guy here, Max Bosley. Everyone say hi, Max. So Max went on a different kind of mission trip. So I'm going to embarrass you for a second. Max is a basketball player here at Wadsworth High School. And last season, he's going to be really mad that I'm sharing this right now, he set the single game scoring record at Wadsworth. How many points did you score?
47.
He's probably even mad that he had to say that. So 47 points. But what I love most about Max, I've played basketball against him a good amount, and he always kills me, and it's always fun to get beat up by him on the court. But what I love most is when he plays basketball, it's not just about the game of basketball, and it's not just about success on the court, but he actually uses it as a mission field to take Jesus to places that maybe Jesus isn't. And I just love it. And so this trip that they just took, he and his dad, Jamie, went on a trip. I'm going to have him share a little bit in a second. About a month ago, something like that, or it's been 2 months now. Where did you guys go, and where were you down there?
Yeah, so we went to...
So you guys
Puerto Rico. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. Where were you guys down in Puerto Rico?
We were down in San Juan, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went in the old San Juan and the new one. So the first one we went to the old one, and then the new one was towards the end of the week. But yeah.
So this was a really unique trip because it was a basketball trip. You were
Right.
going down there to play games, and we'll share about that in a second. But the best part is you actually went down with some of your teammates from Wadsworth and some other schools. Will you share about the crew that went?
Yeah, so I took about I invited prior 4 kids from my school that were on my basketball team in the previous years, and it was cool because in the prior months I invited them and I prayed like just so much, and like I really wanted God to work on them because like I wanted them to come because like I knew if I could get them there, then God would just work, and he worked in some really cool ways, and I'm just very, very thankful that they got to come and some really cool things happened. But
So you had teammates from Wadsworth, and then you also had people coming from Highland. Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
So Revere, and then
Yeah,
some people from
Revere.
Kentucky,
Yeah,
right?
from another state. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So what did you guys do when you got down there? So you played some games, but there was other cool things that happened. Share a little bit about both of those.
Yeah, so basically, I'll walk you through our day. So wake up around like 8, eat breakfast, and then after that, we'd go do some type of work and to help them in a place down there. And we went into this warehouse, and they had a bunch of canned food. So in Puerto Rico, there are hurricanes that happen every single year. So we went there and we got these foods. So and then we got them we put them on a truck, and then it got shipped to a certain place because having a hurricane every single year is kind of like, so like you can't go out in the middle of a hurricane to go get food. So they got food ready for them. So obviously to be ready. And
So they're storing those in those
Right.
areas
Yep.
for them for the time that the hurricane's
Right,
going to come.
So we could just have them ready for them so they don't have to worry about going out and getting food. So that was cool.
Yeah. Now you guys also then later in the day would go and play some basketball, and then what would happen after that?
Yeah, so we'd approximately play a game around like 6, 7, 8, kind of depends. Sometimes we play late, but we'd play play a game, and then after that, one of the guys from our team would share how they came to Christ, and that was really cool seeing that every single day. And yeah, I mean, it was cool because seeing them after, like, I didn't expect knowing into this game. Like, I thought we'd win pretty easily, and if I'm being honest, we didn't. We won like maybe, I think we played like 7 or 8 games, and we went probably like 6-2 or 6-3, and like after they beat us, I was a little like mad to be honest. So, but I was continually trying to stay godly, and because we're not here to play basketball, we're here to bring Jesus Christ into their life, and it was really cool to see that. But
I love that competitive fire, right? You want to win, but at the same point, it's not the
Right.
primary thing,
It was-
right? And
it
I
was-
love that
it was
balance.
tough, yeah.
Yeah. So, did you get a chance to share your testimony there?
yeah, so I don't know if any of you guys know, but I have a stutter, so this was really hard for me to be able to come up here in front of a bunch of people today, and I'm completely shaking out of my boots right now. It's real tough, but it was cool because at first the guy who was there, our leader, they were asked me to share, and I was like, what? And it was crazy because these kids speak Spanish, so it's like when a person would share how they came to Christ, literally with this one person would be talking, then a person on the left would literally every like 10 sentences he would have to translate to him. So it's like, how the heck am I going to do that with a stutter and sounding dumb and stuff like that? It's crazy. So I ended up sharing it, and it was really, really cool, and being able to put my faith in God and seeing what he can do, and always putting my faith in him, because when you feel low, it's really cool to see what he can do even when you feel your lowest. But yeah,
It's pretty awesome to see you taking that step of faith to say, regardless of, it reminds me of Moses. Moses says, God, how am I supposed to be the one to speak? And when God puts you in those places, you just step out in faith. And so just really proud of you for doing that. Well, so you do that on the trip, but one of the most impactful things that happened on the trip was you got to go to a place where you guys actually went under a bridge and served people down who were homeless. Will you share a little bit about that time and those, I guess, that opportunity
yeah,
there?
right. So the guy that was the leader of our trip, he knew a guy down there that so literally his house was probably like an hour from us, so he would literally cook up a bunch of this food, and then we'd have water, Sprite, Coke, all of this stuff. So we got on his truck and we went into the middle of there, and we went under the bridge, and literally just these homeless people that just looked so broken, and it was just heartbreaking to see. But it was really cool because they came in, and just the smile on their faces, and it just really warmed my heart. And it was cool because, like, we probably weren't supposed to give away a little bit more than I did. I kind of gave a little bit more. The guy was getting mad. I'm like, I wanted to give more but like, I think it was like food, water, drink, whatever. But it was cool seeing that for how broken that they are and how far they are from Christ. And it is so sad and it really made me feel good to go there and help them out in a way. But yeah.
Now, you guys had such a huge impact on the area that you visited, but one of the best stories, I think, from that trip is it had a huge impact on your group that went.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, so I think it was the last night. After every single night, we have like a meeting. So like probably like 20 to 25 of us would get in a circle for about an hour, and we'd speak upon what happened that day. So I remember my dad saying, hey, if any of you guys feel led and want to make a decision tonight to accept Christ, and like he felt the Holy Spirit in the room, and I remember he handed out like a piece of paper, and it quite literally walks you through the steps to peace with God and helps you to accept Christ. And there was one specific kid that is one of my best friends that I invited, and really, really praying for this kid, because this kid's one of my best friends, and he was very far from his faith, and I was continuing in school trying to be the best example for Christ that I could. You know, sometimes I'm not the best. I'm the biggest sinner here, I bet you. But it was cool because that night I saw him open it up and just stare at it for like a minute, just looking through it. And my dad said to me that night, he's like, hey, get one of you guys to talk to him, because he was looking through that. Like, he's very interested into that. And sure enough, that next morning, he told us all that he accepted Christ, and he was a born new Christian. It was very, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, a trip that starts as a basketball trip ends with a changed eternity. Yeah. And that wasn't the only one, right? So there were multiple that accepted
so
Christ.
There were two, and then 2 kids got baptized in the ocean there, which was even cooler.
All from your group.
All from
Yeah, can we celebrate that again? Just God working. Well, hey, Max, thanks for sharing all that. So cool to hear about your trip, and just blown away by that. We thank Max for jumping in and taking the step of faith. Thanks, bro.